Welcome to the PDX files. Each week we dive into the weird and the unexplained here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. My name is Peej.
And I'm Mac.
Mac, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about a little bit about yes, it's not the band that people know, the Foo Fighters, right? But the other type of Foo Fighters that kind of caused a bit of a scare back in World War II with all the pilots, not just in the U.S. but in other governments as well, including the Axis powers, who have seen like balls of light following them, right? And it's not because they're about to go through a wormhole. It's because they're not going that fast. Let's just be honest about that. But it's something it's unexplained. That probably, but at least in the tens or the dozens, maybe if not in hundreds of thousands, pilots saw these particular things. And if I were you and I was flying a plane, I saw some like weird glowing lights inside my plane, I think, well, time to go back to base.
All right, so we've got a video that we're going to react to, and so we'll get to that right now.
And this was Project Blueprint. Yeah, that's right. That's one of the
November
the various
1944. One of the early interesting Foo Fighter reports comes from the 415th Night Fighter Squadron. They're flying missions over northeastern France. That's not far from Germany. And this is still in Nazi-occupied part of France, where you've got a number of lights, 8, 10, 12 lights coming in on the left of the aircraft group that are apparently maneuvering in a very unusual way and then just take off at a very high rate of speed. This type of thing was reported many times.
The pilots often described these objects were sort of fuzzy lights that could be a plasma light that would come up from the ground towards the airplane. And we know that now because there have been reinvestigations of all the files.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, that's very similar to the most recently the pilots who were flying the F-32 or whatever they were, Phantoms. I can't remember the next number. I'm not the military guy, but or like F-16s and like being chased by some of these types of really unexplained UAPs. But these planes back in World War II, they didn't go that fast. They didn't have jets. They were flying maybe like 400 to 500 miles an hour at the very most, probably even less than that. So whatever they were seeing was something that could easily keep up with them. A very small, kind of like almost like a probe, almost a little bit when you think about it. But I couldn't imagine being back in one of those like rickety ass planes back in the day, just doing your duty, and then all of a sudden you look at the side of the window, you got these things following you and going ahead of you and doing all sorts of things that, again, according to your knowledge, aren't possible through aeronautics or aerodynamics. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
what would you think in a situation
yeah.
like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, and I was just researching here a little bit, an airplane, fighter airplane during that time of history would be traveling at like a maximum like 450 miles per hour.
Yeah, even less than the planes that we fly on today. The jets, like commercial jet lines, can get up to maybe 650 miles an hour, maybe at the very most. So, seeing something like that completely outmaneuvers you. And that's the thing, is that it seems like it's gone to like a degree further, even to nowadays, where pilots are seeing things that can go like several times faster than that, like Mach 11, Mach 15, kind of things that were it. And again, these are not just kids or like a drunk farmer. They're seeing things in the air that they don't recognize and has never been there before. So I would be pretty freaked out if I were them, and I would definitely use all the experience that I would have to try to just decipher what they were. And I don't even know what I would think back in those days, trying to put myself back into 1942 Mac, which doesn't exist. But yeah, you know what I mean.
I mean, absolutely. And again, we're talking about 1942. We're talking about technology from back then. So it would probably be hard pressed for anybody at that time to just like brush off anything that they see that's out of the ordinary. I mean, I feel like they might have. I think that they might have protocols in the Air Force to report everything. Right? I'm feeling like they have to report
Now they
everything that they
do more
see.
so. Then it wasn't even called the Air Force; it was the Army Air Force. It wasn't even a separate
Copy
branch
that.
of the
Got it.
military. It's like it's so weird how much things have changed. But the just the fact that they were going into battle, seeing these kind of crazy
They're
things,
go
and
exactly,
yeah,
and they
and it
have to
was the
report
Germans
everything.
too.
Yeah, everything they have to report everything that's weird to them because of the knowledge base at that time, right? They would probably have to go, wait, what is this? Is this a weapon? Is this something that's going to come after me? That type of thing. That's what I'm kind of reading into it.
Which is kind of the way it is now. It's like you listen to the government talk about UAPs now. It's like, well, um, we can't explain it. It's probably Earth based. It could be coming from one of our world antagonists. It's like, it's probably not. You can't move that way. You couldn't move it the way that they're doing it then. You couldn't move it the way they're doing it now, which is like
Now,
on a whole
either.
other different level. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's pretty compelling. And again, like what is there to gain from telling a story like that? What is there to gain from, essentially careers being ruined by people who are reporting these things, right?
Right.
It's not. That's another reason why many people say that the UAP phenomena or the UFO phenomena is just like a bunch of people who are trying to make money. I haven't seen anybody making money off of this thing in like 60 years of it being around. That, as far as we know, it could be much longer. Nobody's making money or getting like any kind of like benefit to it. In fact, their careers are ruined. So I don't know.
Do we
We're
want
gonna watch
to
the second
continue
half
with
to
the
find out.
yeah, continue with the video here a second.
Let's do it.
At the time, of course, there was no Air Force. It was the Army Air Force. They were taking reports from pilots very, very seriously. Because if there was a new German weapon, all the pilots needed to know about it, and they needed to think about evasive action.
These objects were called different things at the time before they got a name, and the name that stuck was Foo Fighters. And it comes from a comic strip that was popular at the time called Smokey Stover. And he had a saying, which was, where there's a foo, there's fire. The U.S. government has never offered an explanation for the Foo Fighters. We know that the OSS, which was the precursor of the CIA, investigated. We know that British intelligence investigated this, and we don't have conclusions.
Dr. Hynek, he was just as puzzled as I think anybody else.
My father would refer to the Foo Fighters as sort of an example of something that, there's something fairly serious that we should look into, or, is worthy of investigation, at least supports the idea that there's something going on that we don't understand and we should look into.
And again, anybody who doesn't know who that is, J. Allen Hynek, was the leader of Project Blue Book for most of its existence. I mean, and it started out as a skeptic. And because of the evidence that he was able to see and the people he was able to interview and everything that he did, became completely 180 degrees from where he was previous to that. So, I mean, you take a serious scientist who does their research and actually gets into it, kind of gets their hands dirty, looking into some of these things, not just the Foo Fighters, but I mean, J. Allen Hynek was the reason why we have the term swamp gas. That was a real thing that came from him. And that was at the time when he was like a major skeptic of the UAP phenomenon. So, looking at that, I think honestly, it's really compelling evidence to suggest that at the very least, the case, and maybe it's an atmospheric condition that we're not aware of, right? Maybe it's something that is a natural occurrence. Maybe. I don't think so. I think they would have come up with a reason and a way to debunk that pretty quickly, and they still haven't.
Yeah, and I think that's the key there, Mac. I mean, we're talking about something that happened in 1940s, and to this day. And actually, I was trying to briefly scan the Wikipedia article on this one, but because I was trying to figure out whether there had been recent sightings of Foo Fighters.
Oh, yes, there
as
have
well,
been.
and how much, and how many, and how frequently, right?
Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make was, since this was, I mean, we're talking about 70 years later, scientists and avionics and whatnot, and the government, of course. Well, actually, let's take the government out of the equation for right now. But let's say modern scientists and what would you call like somebody who's not a scientist but try to be a scientist at home, kind of like a armchair scientists out
Yeah,
there,
but
that have access to equipment
yeah,
that could potentially help investigate this. Nobody's come up with with an explanation.
but I
And
mean, even look at it through like the lens of like you're a private company, right?
right,
And you're NASA with JPL, which I don't know if they're a government or private, but they're like Lockheed Martin and all these companies who are at the cutting edge of aeronautics and the flight and propulsion and all these things. Like, if you could have done it, why would you have waited till now? They don't have anything that can do it now. That's the whole thing. Is they can't replicate what they did, what happened then, what people saw.
right,
And if they could, they would have done it because they've been making billions and billions of dollars. It's like ridiculous. They would have already done it.
right. And
And so
also,
that's the reason why I don't buy the whole government like, yeah, it doesn't exist.
well, yeah, that's the
Because they
government,
would have
right?
done it.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the government. That's kind of like their staple response, right? Because of reasons that I think we've already discussed in a previous episode, where the government um, obfuscates the public intentionally because they don't want to cause panic. They don't want to cause mass hysteria.
Right.
Um, However, the other part of is this that's kind of a mystery to me is how, if we're talking about just Air Force and making and the Air Force or whatever the Army um, flying squad, whatever,
Mm.
and up to the Air Force and
Squadrons, yes.
today's technology and today's military. And if they are continuing the protocol of reporting everything, it would be interesting to find out exactly how many times, what the frequency is of Foo Fighters being seen by military personnel, and then add to that what's probably not being reported by commercial airliners and also private airlines, right? About
Yep.
what they see up there. And if it is some sort of atmospheric thing, what change could possibly happen in only 70 years to all of a sudden either they no longer happen, Foo Fighters no longer happen or not being as visible as frequently as before. It's just all of these kind of questions. It leads to other questions, and it is kind of frustrating how 70 years later there's still no explanation.
Well, I think it's because of the government has done a really good job of discrediting people who in those days, like, we're still paying that forward. Unfortunately, people who are like real scientists, real people who have seen something that they can't explain, right? And I
Right,
think that what happened is the ridicule, and then the ridicule became like, okay, if the ridicule is just not just haha, it's Randy Quaid at the bar in fucking Independence Day. It's actually I might lose my fucking career because I said something about this, right?
right,
And so that's a long term problem that has been kind of helped by the I guess the more mainstreaming of it, but it's still like so far back. I mean, I guarantee if we asked, if we went and looked and did a poll of people who we know and our own families and our own friends, how many of them would actually believe it if they told the truth? Like, the people like to say, "Oh yeah, I believe in it," but if you actually say, "Hey, look, I've seen this evidence. Look at this case. Look at that case," it's like, "Oh, that's like no, there's no way that's possible." And that's the thing. I think if people can just get outside of that little that mindset of it can't be right, it doesn't fit my whatever it is. It's not a moral thing. It's more of just like this is like kind of mind block I think that people have for it. And look at the actual mountain of, and that's just not like a little mountain. It's just like Mount Tabor sized mountain. They're talking about a fucking like Mount Everest sized mountain of evidence that backs up the fact that, at least in my opinion, the fact that we have been visited by what I don't know. I don't know if it's aliens. It could be future humans. It could be from another dimension. But there's so many things, like even recently, HR McMaster's, who was the national security advisor for Trump, came out
right,
recently on Bill Maher and even says like, yeah, we don't know what the fuck it is. Basically, it's like we have no idea what it
right.
is. If they don't know, based on the science that we have, and based on what we know about our enemies and our allies and all that kind of stuff, nobody should be so fucking confident to say it's like, oh yeah, that's just fucking swamp gas from Mars. at least in my opinion, anyway.
All the way up there? Come on.
I mean, that is a lot of swamp gas. We got a lot of hot air down here too, but we're getting to that season. But again, I think if nothing else from the show that that we're doing with at least one listener or one guest, probably every now and then, is just to open your mind to other really other possibilities. And it does not just to do with UAPs; it's to do with certainly paranormal and all the stuff that we're getting into. It's like just try to have at least not that weird skeptic thing. It's like I don't understand the skeptic, like the staunch skeptic,
The staunch
refusing to
skeptic.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they just don't
Well,
even want to give it the possibility of it even
right.
happening.
And
And
then
I'm
again
not
on the
talking about our friend,
and then again on the opposite end of that are the conspiracy theories,
the
like
nutbags.
the
Yes,
nutbags that are just would believe in everything, anything and everything, and so that doesn't help from crediting
No.
the situation, right?
you can't be extreme on either end, really.
Well, I've got quite a few flights that I'll be taking between now and the end of the year, so I'll be on the lookout for any Foo Fighters. All right. Well, if you enjoyed this content, please give it a like and share it across your socials to help get the word out about our show. If you hadn't already done so, please subscribe, and on YouTube, hit that notification bell to make sure that you don't miss out on new uploads. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.